Imagine a world where the heart of one of the most advanced civilizations on Earth is targeted for total destruction in less than 7 minutes. This is not a distant possibility, but a calculated simulation of what occurs when strategic restraint is abandoned. At 11:47 in the morning, the city of Tokyo is a bustling hive of 13 million people. Business districts are crowded, the transportation network is at peak efficiency, and the horizon is clear. At this exact moment, a regional strategic command initiates a sequence that changes history. From mobile launch platforms stationed near the eastern coastline of the peninsula, 6 intermediate-range ballistic missiles ignite. These are the Hwasong-12 class, designed for high-altitude trajectories and rapid descent. Their flight path is not directed at a military outpost or a naval fleet, but at the geographic center of the Japanese capital. 4 seconds after the engines ignite, the simulation tracks the heat signatures through a network of infrared early warning satellites. The data is processed instantly by the C4ISR systems of the Indo-Pacific Command. The alert level is elevated to its highest state. At 11:47 and 8 seconds, the Japanese J-Alert system activates simultaneously across every mobile device, television screen, and public speaker in the Kanto region. The message is concise. A ballistic missile launch has been detected. Seek immediate shelter in reinforced buildings or underground stations. This is not a drill. In the Shinjuku and Shibuya districts, the transition from normalcy to crisis occurs in heartbeats. The sound of air raid sirens, a frequency designed to cut through the noise of any city, echoes between the skyscrapers. Millions of civilians begin an orderly but urgent descent into the world's most extensive subway network. At the Ministry of Defense in Ichigaya, the Crisis Command Center is fully operational within 90 seconds of the initial detection. The regional leadership is informed that the projected impact time is less than 600 seconds. The primary defense layers are already responding. Out in the waters of the Pacific, the Aegis-equipped destroyers receive the digitized fire control solution. These vessels are the front line of a multi-tiered defense architecture that has been prepared for decades. At 11:49, the first kinetic engagement begins. From the vertical launch systems of the Aegis platforms, the SM-3 Block II Alpha interceptors are released. These are not traditional missiles. They carry no explosives. They are kinetic kill vehicles designed to collide with incoming warheads in the vacuum of space at combined speeds exceeding 24,000 kilometers per hour. The first 3 interceptions occur 120 kilometers above the Earth's surface. In the high atmosphere, the collisions create brilliant flashes of light, invisible to the naked eye, but catastrophic for the incoming projectiles. 3 warheads are neutralized in the mid-course phase, their debris scattered into non-threatening orbits. However, 3 remaining threats continue their terminal descent, accelerating as they re-enter the atmosphere. The simulation now shifts to the final line of defense as the countdown to impact enters its final 2 minutes. As the 3 remaining threats plummet toward the Kanto plain, the simulation analyzes the underlying strategic architecture that makes this defense possible. The adversary's primary miscalculation lies in the assumption that a sudden strike would paralyze the regional command structure. In reality, the defense of this airspace is governed by an integrated network known as C4ISR. This system links space-based infrared sensors, high-altitude surveillance drones, and naval assets into a single, unified consciousness. Within seconds of the initial thermal detection, the trajectory of every projectile is calculated with mathematical precision, allowing the defense to transition from a passive posture to an active engagement. Central to this shield are the maritime assets positioned in the waters surrounding the archipelago. The JS Maya, a state-of-the-art Aegis-equipped destroyer, operates as the primary node for local interception. It is supported by the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group located 80 miles off the coast. The presence of these assets is not a coincidence, but a result of a permanent strategic readiness posture. The Ronald Reagan serves as a mobile airfield housing 48 Super Hornets, capable of multi-role operations, while its escorting cruisers provide additional layers of radar coverage and missile capacity. The technical backbone of this operation is the automated data link. When the satellites identify a launch, the information does not wait for human processing. It is fed into the Aegis Combat System, which selects the most efficient interceptor based on the target's speed, altitude, and projected impact point. This illustrates the doctrine of integrated air and missile defense, where the geographical location of the launcher matters less than the speed of the network. The adversary's strategy relied on overwhelming the defense through sheer velocity, yet they encountered a system designed to process thousands of data points per second. Geopolitically, this engagement highlights the depth of the mutual security framework. The seamless cooperation between the naval forces of the two partner nations is the result of decades of joint exercises and technological synchronization. The defense of the capital is not merely a local military action, but a demonstration of an ironclad commitment to regional stability. As the countdown continues, the simulation monitors the shift in the adversary's command centers. They expected a window of negotiation or a moment of hesitation. Instead, they find themselves facing a transparent battlefield where their every move is logged, analyzed, and countered before the first wave of projectiles even enters the lower atmosphere. The focus now turns to the terminal phase of the interception, where the margin for error is reduced to zero. At 11:49 and 15 seconds, the terminal phase of the engagement begins. 3 ballistic warheads are now descending through the upper atmosphere, having survived the initial mid-course interception. Their velocity has reached Mach 10, creating a sheath of ionized plasma around the nose cones that complicates traditional radar tracking. However, the simulation utilizes dual-mode seeker technology, combining infrared imaging with active radar homing to maintain a lock. The tactical focus shifts to the final line of defense, the PAC-3 Patriot missile batteries positioned around the Tokyo metropolitan area and the advanced electronic warfare suites of the naval fleet. The 4th and 5th missiles are successfully engaged 20 kilometers above the city. The PAC-3 interceptors utilize a hit-to-kill mechanism, which relies on a solid-state seeker and a maneuverable lethality enhancer. Unlike older systems that used proximity fuses, the PAC-3 destroys the target by direct impact, ensuring that the chemical or kinetic energy of the warhead is completely neutralized. These interceptions result in 2 high-altitude structural failures, with debris incinerating upon atmospheric re-entry over the rural outskirts of the Kanto region. However, the 6th missile exhibits a slight trajectory deviation, a result of primitive but effective mid-flight maneuvering designed to confuse automated interceptors. It bypasses the final Patriot battery's primary engagement window. At this critical juncture, the simulation activates the quantum spoofing and electronic warfare protocols. High-powered microwave emitters from the Aegis destroyers and ground-based electronic countermeasure units saturate the missile's guidance frequency. By injecting false telemetry data into the missile's onboard computer, the system creates a phantom target several kilometers away from the actual city center. The result of this electronic intervention is immediate. The missile's flight control surfaces struggle to reconcile the conflicting data, causing the projectile to wobble and veer off its original path toward Shibuya. At 11:51, the final warhead impacts the center of Tokyo Bay. The kinetic energy of the impact at 3,800 kilometers per hour creates a massive displacement of water, sending a plume 200 meters into the air. While the resulting shockwave shatters glass in waterfront structures and sends tremors through the reclaimed land of the harbor, there are no reported casualties. Within 4 minutes and 45 seconds of the initial launch, the threat to the capital has been eliminated. Every projectile fired has either been destroyed in space, neutralized in the atmosphere, or diverted by electronic means. The simulation tracks a brief moment of silence across the defensive network as the data confirms zero impact on high-density civilian areas. However, the strategic calculation has now shifted from defense to an overwhelming response. The window for a peaceful resolution has closed, and the protocol for Operation Rising Sun is now fully authorized. The moment the final projectile is confirmed neutralized in Tokyo Bay, the strategic landscape undergoes a fundamental transformation. For decades, the regional defense posture has been one of containment and passive shielding. At 11:51, that era ends. The simulation monitors a secure, high-level communication link between the primary regional command center in Hawaii and the leadership in Tokyo. The message is definitive. The safety of the civilian population has been secured, and the transition to offensive countermeasures is authorized. This shift represents a historic pivot in military doctrine. For the first time in nearly 80 years, the regional self-defense forces move beyond a strictly defensive role. Under the established mutual security protocols, the directive for Operation Rising Sun is activated. This operation is not designed for a proportional response, but for the total elimination of the adversary's capability to launch a secondary strike. The objective is clear: decapitate the command and control infrastructure and dismantle every known ballistic missile site within the next 30 minutes. The authorization of overwhelming force changes the tempo of the entire theater. At 11:52, the order is transmitted to the flight decks and missile silos across the region. The logic of the response is rooted in the preemptive counterstrike theory, which posits that once an act of aggression has been initiated, the only way to ensure future security is the complete neutralization of the threat's source. This is not a declaration of traditional warfare, but a surgical high-intensity enforcement of regional stability. The logistics of this shift are massive and instantaneous. Data links that were previously focused on tracking incoming threats now switch to target acquisition and fire control solutions for offensive assets. In the command bunkers, analysts finalize the list of high-priority targets ranging from deep underground storage facilities to mobile launch corridors. The regional leadership's response is unified and decisive. By 11:53, the We Strike Back protocol is no longer a plan. It is an active kinetic reality. The sky, which moments ago was a shield, is now being prepared as the primary vector for a multi-domain retaliatory strike. At 12:00, 3:16 minutes after the initial launch toward Tokyo, the first phase of the retaliatory simulation initiates. The objective is the total suppression of the adversary's situational awareness. This is achieved through the deployment of the EA-18G Growler, a specialized electronic warfare platform. These aircraft do not engage with traditional kinetic munitions initially. Instead, they utilize high-powered tactical jamming pods to saturate the adversary's integrated air defense network. Within seconds, the radar screens across the peninsula are rendered useless, filled with static and false echoes. This process, known as electronic blinding, ensures that the adversary's surface-to-air missile systems cannot achieve a target lock on the incoming strike package. Following the electronic screen, 24 Super Hornets from the Carrier Strike Group cross into the designated airspace. They operate with a weapons-free authorization, targeting the 6 mobile missile launchers identified as the source of the Tokyo attack. These launchers, known as Transporter Erector Launchers, or TELs, are notoriously difficult to track due to their mobility and use of concealed tunnels. However, the simulation utilizes real-time satellite reconnaissance and persistent overhead signals intelligence to maintain a constant fix on their coordinates. The primary weapon of choice for this phase is the AGM-158 JASSM, a low-observable long-range cruise missile. The JASSM is designed with a stealthy airframe that makes it nearly invisible to any radar that might have survived the initial electronic jamming. It follows a terrain-masking flight path, flying at extremely low altitudes to avoid detection by ground-based observers. The guidance system uses an infrared seeker with automatic target recognition, allowing the missile to distinguish between a decoy and a functional mobile launcher with high precision. At 12:07, the first wave of 48 stealth cruise missiles impacts the designated coordinates near Wonsan. The simulation records the total destruction of the 6 mobile units. The kinetic energy combined with the high explosive fragmentation warheads ensures that both the launch vehicles and their support crews are neutralized instantly. This surgical strike prevents the possibility of a secondary panic launch by the adversary. Simultaneously, the strike extends to the broader military infrastructure. 72 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from naval platforms in the Sea of Japan reach their terminal phase. Their targets include primary air bases, satellite launch facilities, and known missile production complexes. The simulation monitors the cratering of runways and the destruction of fuel depots, effectively grounding the adversary's air force and paralyzing their logistics. By 12:12, the visible components of the adversary's missile program are in ruins, but the most critical targets, the hardened command and control centers buried deep beneath the surface, remain. The transition to Phase Beta is now imminent. At 12:15, as the smoke from the initial cruise missile strikes begins to drift across the coastal regions, the simulation enters its most decisive phase. 12B, 2 Spirit stealth bombers, having traveled thousands of miles from their staging grounds in the Pacific, enter the adversary's sovereign airspace. Operating at an altitude of 40,000 feet, these aircraft remain completely invisible to the remnants of the regional radar network. Their mission is the decapitation strike, the systematic destruction of the hardened deep underground command and control complexes, where the high-level leadership and military staff are located. Each B-2 carries a payload of 16 GBU, 57 massive ordnance penetrators. These are the heaviest non-nuclear munitions in the global inventory, weighing 30,000 pounds each. The physics of these weapons are designed for one specific purpose: to defeat the most protected underground facilities on the planet. The outer casing is made of a high-density, reinforced steel alloy that allows the bomb to survive the massive G-forces of impact without shattering. Utilizing its sheer mass and velocity, the GBU-57 can penetrate 60 meters of high-strength reinforced concrete or 100 meters of solid rock before its delayed action fuse ignites the high-explosive core. At 12:18, the simulation records the first release over a primary command hub near the capital. The bombs are released in a synchronized sequence guided by GPS and internal inertial navigation to impact within a 1-meter radius of each other. This drilling effect ensures that each subsequent bomb travels through the path cleared by the previous one, reaching depths that were previously considered impregnable. The resulting underground explosions create localized seismic events, pulverizing the granite foundations and collapsing the ventilation and communication shafts. By 12:24, the simulation tracks the impact of these munitions across 7 identified primary command bunkers. These sites, constructed over decades to survive a total war scenario, are systematically rendered non-functional. The structural integrity of the underground complexes fails, leading to the total collapse of the internal chambers. In this simulation, the adversary's hierarchy is not just silenced, it is physically entombed. The central nervous system of the military apparatus is severed, leaving the remaining conventional forces without direction, coordination, or the ability to authorize further escalations. The silence from the underground is the definitive sign that the strategic decapitation is complete. At 12:28, the simulation reaches its most complex phase, the synchronization of a trilateral allied response. While the heavy strategic assets have already neutralized the primary command hubs, the focus now shifts to the tactical suppression of the adversary's remaining conventional capabilities. For the first time in modern history, the Japan Self-Defense Force and the South Korean military operate in a unified data-linked environment with American assets. This integration is powered by the Link 16 Tactical Exchange Network, allowing every aircraft in the theater to share a common operational picture. 16. Japanese F-35. A stealth fighters launched from Misawa Air Base integrate with 4 South Korean F-15K Strike Eagles. Their primary targets are the hardened artillery positions and short-range rocket batteries located along the northern side of the demilitarized zone. These positions have posed a persistent threat to regional population centers for decades. Utilizing the F-35's advanced sensor fusion, the pilots identify and designate dozens of targets, simultaneously sharing the data with the Strike Eagles. The resulting engagement uses small-diameter precision bombs, which minimize collateral damage while ensuring the total destruction of the reinforced artillery revetments. Simultaneously, at 12:35, 6 submarines positioned in the surrounding waters initiate a secondary missile volley. 48 Tomahawk missiles are launched from submerged tubes targeted at the secondary leadership residences and administrative compounds scattered across the northern provinces. This part of the simulation ensures that no auxiliary command structure can be established to fill the vacuum created by the initial bunker-busting strikes. The logic is one of total administrative paralysis. Every known location where the adversary's leadership might seek refuge or attempt to coordinate a counter-movement is engaged. By 12:38, exactly 38 minutes after the first missile was detected over Tokyo, the last munition in the primary strike package reaches its target. The simulation logs a total of 192 precision bombs and nearly 200 cruise missiles delivered across the theater. The kinetic phase of the operation concludes with the complete suppression of the adversary's offensive and defensive capabilities. The sensors report a total lack of organized military activity across the peninsula, signaling that the immediate threat has been eliminated. The transition from a crisis to an environment of total Allied air and sea superiority is complete, leaving the international community to process the speed and finality of the 38-minute response. The simulation concludes at 12:45, less than 1 hour after the initial transgression. The post-strike assessment conducted via high-resolution synthetic aperture radar satellites reveals a landscape of total strategic paralysis. The adversary's capability to project power beyond its borders has been functionally eliminated. 7 primary command centers are confirmed as craters. 43 critical military facilities have been neutralized, and the entire ballistic missile inventory is either destroyed or rendered inaccessible. This outcome demonstrates the terrifying efficiency of modern multi-domain operations, where the transition from peace to total victory is measured in minutes rather than months. The geopolitical aftermath of this 38-minute engagement ripples across the globe. Neighboring superpowers who remained silent during the kinetic phase are now forced to reconcile with a new reality. The speed and precision of the response have fundamentally altered the concept of strategic buffer states. The simulation suggests that observing nations would shift toward intensified diplomatic stabilization, realizing that the threshold for a decisive military intervention has been lowered by the advent of autonomous and stealth-integrated systems. The regional equilibrium is no longer maintained by a balance of numbers, but by the speed of the data link and the lethality of the precision strike complex. From a humanitarian perspective, the simulation offers a chilling insight into the future of conflict. While the defense of the capital was a success with 0 civilian casualties in the targeted city, the internal cost to the adversary is estimated at nearly 3,000 military personnel. The speed of the destruction leaves no room for traditional diplomacy or the de-escalation of tensions. In this new era, the first mistake is often the last. The Rising Sun simulation serves as a reminder that as technology advances, the window for human intervention in the machinery of war continues to shrink. The preservation of peace in the modern age depends entirely on the absolute deterrence of the first strike. Once the first missile is tracked, the sequence of events becomes an irreversible mathematical certainty. The world that wakes up 40 minutes after such a conflict is a world that has been irrevocably changed, where empires can fall between the hours of lunch and the afternoon commute. The 38-minute war is not just a tactical possibility. It is a testament to the fragile state of global stability in the age of the algorithm. This video script and its contents are generated by an artificial intelligence simulation. The scenarios, military maneuvers, and geopolitical outcomes described are purely hypothetical and based on publicly available strategic doctrines. This content is intended for educational, analytical, and entertainment purposes and does not represent an accurate or 100% factual prediction of real-world events or political realities.